Over two-thirds of Afghanistan has been captured by Taliban. A stunning collapse really for the government forces that have been trained and equipped by the Western powers for over 2 decades. With Taliban rapidly moving closer to capture Kabul, U.S. military estimates that the capital could come under insurgent pressure within a month, and the Taliban could overrun the rest of the country within a few months. Thousands of Afghans have fled amid fear of Taliban returning with its brutal and regressive rule. President Ashraf Ghani, though, still trying to put up some kind of a bold front. Addressing the nation today, he said that remobilizing the Afghan security and defense forces is their top priority. He also assured his country that he will not allow an imposed war on Afghans to bring further killings. Really, one wonders to what level will he be able to actually implement these promises.
در حالی که می‌دانم که از حال و آینده‌تان نگران هستید، برایتان اطمینان می‌دهم که به عنوان رئیس جمهورتان تمرکز من بر این است تا از گسترش بیشتر بی‌ثباتی، خشونت و آوارگی مردمم جلوگیری کنم. به عنوان یک رسالت تاریخی تلاش می‌کنم تا نگذارم جنگ تحمیل شده بر مردم افغانستان بیشتر از این باعث کشتار مردم بیگناه، از دست رفتن دستاوردهای 20 ساله شما، تخریب تأسیسات عامه و بی‌ثباتی دوامدار شود. په اوسني وضعیت کې د امنیتي او دفاعي قواو بیا انسجام زموږ لومړیتوب دی او په دې هکله جدي اقدامات تر لاس لاندې دي.
Taliban is currently fighting for control over the strategically located Mazar-e-Sharif. It is a city in northern Afghanistan. The city has been surrounded on 3 sides by the Taliban and is now engaged in a heavy fighting on the outskirts. There are no immediate word on casualties. The residents of Mazar-e-Sharif fear for their safety. Most businesses are shut and locals there have no source of income.
بسیار وضعیت در اطراف در داخل شهر یا در بیرون وضعیت بسیار سراسیمه است. مردم پریشان است. کاروبار به اندازه گم شده که باورت میاد روزانه ما عاید 100 افغانی پیدا کردن نمیتونیم.
در کل وضعیت شهر خیلی رو به خرابی است. حداقل خاص ما به صفت یک جوان که 17 سال 18 سال در این شهر زندگی کرده می‌بینیم است که یک آرامش بیاید، یک صلح بیاید، دائمی بیاید جنگ تا وقتی.
I'm trying hard to understand why the administration decided for a complete withdrawal right now. To my mind, there was no pressing need for a withdrawal. The American presence in Afghanistan was quite small, quite low risk, relatively affordable. American troops were not actually in harm's way or engaged in ground combat in large numbers, not for years. There were not a large number of U.S. soldiers dying in combat. And our presence there was actually achieving something. We were keeping the Taliban at bay and preventing al-Qaeda from reconstituting safe haven, keeping them on the run. And all of that will be undone now with our withdrawal. So I'm mystified why the president decided what he decided.
Well, that's an expert, of course, talking about the logic behind US's decision to completely withdraw. In fact, officially, that withdrawal process is not even over, and you've seen the kind of blitzkrieg that Taliban has actually unfolded and unleashed across the country of Afghanistan. That map actually gives you a sense of what's really already under the control of Taliban, which is in dark red. And every day, there are more and more regions that get added there. And very few parts are actually left outside of Taliban's control. The operative ones, the biggest of the provinces, and even, infrastructurally, strategically important cities and provinces have already fallen. Maroof Raza, strategic affairs expert, joins me on the phone line. Maroof, I want to start off with actually the commentary that's coming from President Ashraf Ghani, the speech that he made to his country today. Is that going to really pacify or bring about assurance to anybody living in Afghanistan right now?
I don't think so. because Mr. Ghani himself knows deep inside that he's cornered now. He needs to actually, without further bloodshed, hand over whatever is left of Kabul to the Taliban and find an exit route for himself. Because he's been seen by the Taliban for a long time as a stooge of America and the West. Please remember, Ghani has been extremely critical of Pakistan in all his speeches in the last 2 to 3 years, where even Pakistan wanted to offer him money for humanitarian assistance, which was a farce in any case, but he gave it back to Pakistan to say you could put better use to it for something else, don't give Afghanistan money. So, and the Taliban is essentially the Pakistan army in Shalwar Kurta and turban. So they are gunning for him. They want to make a specimen of him. And America had talked about, when they made a hasty exit recently from Bagram, that they are going to do over-the-horizon operations. Now is the time for America to move in troops there if they want to provide some protection to Ghani under a quickly assembled coalition of countries that support whatever is left of Ghani and his regime. And America has apparently put a brigade worth of troops on standby, which is 3,000 odd troops. The British are sending 600 troops, so that is about a battalion, probably of Marine commandos, and some other airstrike capabilities that be available. Now, if that works as a deterrent for the Taliban, then the Taliban may slow down, because the Taliban has a number of negotiators in Doha in Qatar who can be held hostage by the Western countries and told that if you do anything to President Ghani and his establishment, like his chief executive Abdullah, then we will have to punish these people who are your high representatives and senior members of the Taliban. Elsewhere, I don't see any other compromise solution working out. No amount of sanctions against the Taliban will work. Whatever the utterances by many countries, including India, that they will not recognize the Taliban. The Taliban does not need recognition. It needs only funding and support that it continues to get and will get in future from Pakistan and China. China is going to soon make a highway between Quetta in Pakistan and Kandahar and even Kabul, which will be an extension of China's Belt and Road Initiative. And with Pakistan as their frontmen, they are going to take control of Afghanistan, like America had used the Taliban to take control of Afghanistan when the Russians were on the last days. Now, it's a repeat of history 25 years later. Pakistan will do exactly the same, but this time for China for a price. So, unfortunately, the people caught up in the crossfire in the past and in future will be the people of Afghanistan.
Yeah.
America had gone in for its own purposes, but left more than 65,000 people in Afghanistan dead and more than 100,000 injured. Some people say it is double the number. I don't have exact figures. But quite clearly, the Afghan people have gone from crisis to crisis. And if the world really wants to do something, they should quickly assemble a coalition of the willing and get into Afghanistan and push back the Taliban physically or diplomatically to an acceptable level. But quite frankly, it is a lost game. It was lost the day the Americans quietly pulled out of there.
Right.
With no sense of responsibility for the Afghan people who they have badgered and hammered for the last 20 years just to soothe their own egos, that the 9/11 attacks came from Afghanistan. The 9/11 attacks came from friends of US. Only they pretended to be Al-Qaeda. These were the same people that the US government had nurtured. And the 9/11 attacks were essentially done to give America a military strategic purpose to fight another war to sell more weapons. So sadly, it is end game for the West and it is a new game for Pakistan. How much Pakistan will...
Well, Maroof, it will be, they couldn't care less at this point of time. They will perhaps at some time later when things get really ugly again and begin to impact them. But unfortunately, it will impact us much before that. Like you said, Taliban is effectively an extended arm of Pakistan. And if all of the terror assets move to Afghanistan and thrive further there, then that's a big cause of concern for us. We'll hopefully have a more detailed conversation at another time. Maroof Raza, thank you so much for joining me on this conversation. Let me also bring in Ambassador Dilip Sinha, former MEA Joint Secretary in charge for Pakistan, Afghanistan, and the Iran desk. Thank you so much, Ambassador, for speaking to me again. The fact that the president of Afghanistan today gave this address trying to put up a brave front, does it really matter? Does it count? Is anybody going to be falling for this kind of an assurance right now? Because from the looks of it, every day, more and more Afghanistan falls to Taliban.
No, I don't think he has any credibility left. His credibility had been considerably undermined last year in March when the Americans went ahead and signed a separate deal with the Taliban. Today, when the Taliban are moving in militarily and America has abandoned Afghanistan, there is very little credibility left for Ashraf Ghani to try and give any kind of an assurance to the Afghan people. Unless the Americans move in full force now to protect Kabul, which will not be easy now that most of the approach roads to Kabul have been taken over by the Taliban. And the map that you were showing showed that there was only one corridor left open, which is from the north, from Tajikistan to Kabul. And that too is under threat because Mazar-e-Sharif is under threat from the north. So you have a situation where Kabul will actually get cut off. So even if the American forces move in and try and protect Kabul, it will remain an isolated island where people will start either fleeing. Those people who had collaborated actively with the American forces, they will be on the hit list of the Taliban, so they have to leave. And the other people, the normal residents of Kabul, will have to accept that there will be a new regime that will come into force where women will not be able to work, girls' schools will be shut down. And they have to accept this. So the dream that the international community had shown to the people of Afghanistan of a modern society, that dream has been shattered. And even if Kabul can be saved, let's say for a few more months or maybe even a year, it will still be a city under siege where life will be extremely difficult because the Taliban will constantly be attacking it. Remember, there are a lot of refugees moving into Kabul, a lot of civilians moving into Kabul. The Taliban would have probably already infiltrated Kabul through these civilians, refugees coming in, because the Taliban can't be distinguished from the others. So Kabul becomes extremely vulnerable for the ordinary citizens because of the fear of terrorist bomb blast, etc.
Yes, and of course, by the day, we will have to wait and see how they proceed. The one point that Maroof was making, and I don't know, Ambassador Sinha, if you were able to hear that part, was about these small divisions or units actually that some of the international countries are sending now. One way of reporting it is also that they are bringing those people in to evacuate their own citizens from various parts of Afghanistan. Will there be any more to it? Will that slow down Taliban or deter Taliban at all?
No, I think we must be clear in our minds that the only country that can help the Afghan government, the only country that has the military capacity is the United States of America. European countries do not have this capacity. We have seen that in the wars in Kosovo, Bosnia, etc., even in Libya. The Europeans can start an operation, but they can't sustain it because they don't have the capacity. And even the US capacity, as I mentioned, will be extremely limited because the land routes to Kabul will be under attack from the Taliban. Earlier, the Americans used to use the Pakistani route, and now that Pakistan can see the Taliban on the verge of victory, there's no reason why Pakistan should continue to cooperate with the US, but it may make some token contribution. But the bigger problem is that the relations between the US and Russia are not particularly convenient. So one doesn't know whether they can cooperate. There was talk of Russia making available some Central Asian bases to the Americans. If that collaboration takes place, then it is possible for the Americans to put up a realistic resistance in collaboration with the Afghan army. We are also receiving reports that the Afghan army is deprived of even arms and ammunitions. So that is another difficulty that the Americans will have to overcome. The Afghan forces that are giving way to the Taliban are not really putting up the kind of resistance that most people had wished for and hoped for.
Right, absolutely. Thank you so much, Dilip Sinha. Always a pleasure, Ambassador, to have you on our shows and to hear to your insights. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Well, in fact, like we were talking, America sent some of its troops, 3,000 of them, to help evacuate their embassy in Kabul, also evacuate locals if necessary. Similarly, Britain and Canada are sending smaller units to airlift their own citizens out of Afghanistan. In fact, at the Kabul airport itself, one would get a sense of how people are trying to get to safer places as Taliban progresses.
What we want to be able to do is to get there fast and get there capable and be able to provide as much capacity to the State Department as we can. And our intention is to be able to move thousands per day. Going forward, we're going to do a couple of things. We're going to make sure that a terrorist threat can't emanate from Afghanistan again by maintaining robust over-the-horizon counterterrorism capabilities in the region. And we're going to continue to support our Afghan partners bilaterally through maintenance support, through financial support, and we're going to continue to want to see a stable, secure Afghanistan. The other thing I would say is that we want to continue to see that there's a negotiated political settlement here for governance going forward.
Of course, the biggest uncertainty and fear is for women and children as their future looks bleak under the Taliban rule. Teachers shared their horrid stories back from heyday of Taliban when the Islamic fundamentalists controlled everything from daily activities to education, even their clothing and work as far as women are concerned. Listen in to them narrating some of those stories.
وقتی که دیدم همه چیز داره از دست میره واقعا ناامید شدم و دمی یکی دو روز فقط همینقدر تلاش میکنم که دوستانم رو بیشتر ببینم حداقل برنامه‌هایی که میخواستم خودم در طول چندین سال بعد انجام بدم اونا رو با بقیه شریک میکنم که اگر یکی از ما زنده ماند او بتونه بقیه برنامه‌ها رو پیش ببره. حلالیت میطلبم از دوستانم اگه به کسی حرفی زدیم کاری کردیم که رنجیده شده چون اگر طالب بیاید مطمئن هستم که ما زنده نخواهیم ماند و چیزی دیگه برای گفتن ندارم. میفهمم که ما رو میکشن.
خانهشان قسم چبلی پای ما در پایشون چبلی بوده اوها را از رکشا پایین کردن لطکوب کردن همراه کیبل که چرا قسم چبلی میپوشه که جوانا را خراب بکنی